Several years ago, Lily Tomlin debuted her show, The Search for Signs of Intelligent Life in the Universe. And in this production, she portrayed a number of different characters that she had created, one of which was a woman called Trudy the Bag Lady. And at one point during Trudy's monologue, she said, "All my life, I wanted to be somebody. I guess I should have been more specific." Well, who are you? And perhaps more important, who will you be? The Apostle Paul said, "Beloved, now we are the children of God, but it does not yet appear what we shall be." Paul was saying that we are all works in progress. Progress meaning that we're not standing still. Wherever we happen to be in life, there is always more to come. Now, we've all had dreams of being someone great, particularly when we were children. We imagined the kind of person we would become. And while we may have given up on some of our dreams, even now, we may find ourselves wishing to live up to our full potential, to discover what we're capable of, and becoming the best and most beautiful version of ourselves that we can imagine. When do you really become yourself? Is there some magical age at which you're finally finished becoming yourself? Well, how we answer these questions depends in large part on how we define and think about life. What is the meaning of life? Is it to give back to life? Is it to prosper as much as you possibly can? Is it to be of service to others? Perhaps, in the words of my friend and Science of Mind minister, Dr. Pat Campbell, perhaps we're all here to give God a good time. Maybe nobody definitively knows the meaning of life. Philosophers have spent their entire lifetimes trying to figure it out. Maybe you'd be better off figuring out your place in life, your purpose on this earth. Raymond Charles Barker gave us a clue when he wrote, "The what you are is determined by what you have done with the who, with the why you are." Say that again because I messed it up. The what you are is determined by what you have done with the why you are. Now, if you're seeking to become the very best version of yourself, then you might consider something called self-actualization, which is a theory developed by psychologist Abraham Maslow. And he described this as the desire to become more and more of what one is, to become everything that one is capable of becoming. And Dr. Maslow said that before we can look into our self-actualization, we need to take care of four basic needs: physiological, safety, love, and esteem. And these were described physiological things we need to survive: food, water, shelter. Safety, the need to feel secure, safe, and not fearful of the world. Love, the need to feel love and affection in our social relationships. And esteem, the need to have self-esteem for our own achievements, as well as esteem and recognition from others. And only after we fulfill these four needs can we go for the ultimate need, self-actualization, which is the need to be fulfilled and to reach our full potential. For Dr. Maslow, meeting our full potential means we must do the things that will make us truly happy. As he said, a musician must make music, a painter must paint, an artist must paint, a poet must write if he's to be absolutely happy. What we can be, we must be. What we can be, we must be. But what if the thing that made you happy 10 years ago no longer makes you happy now? What if the thing that makes you happy now won't make you happy later? Well, if our taste buds can change as we age, and they do, why can't the things that make us happy change as well? Well, it turns out they do. According to Harvard psychologist Daniel Gilbert in his TED Talk, The Psychology of Your Future Self, he says, human beings are works in progress that mistakenly think they're finished. The person you are right now is as transient, as fleeting, and as temporary as all the people you've ever been. The one constant in our lives is change. Now, to some people, the notion of constant change is exhausting. But there's one thing that never changes, and that is the nature of the divine. You know, spirit is always doing something new, but the laws through which that change happens, the laws never change. The same system that takes care of the changing of the seasons or the phases of the moon is in place to allow us to become whatever we choose to become. So how do we go about this process? Well, the first thing to get clear on is that becoming the person you'd like to be is not an outside search. You won't find the answers you seek from your partner. You won't find your confidence in your work title or the clubs that you join. You won't find your true abundance in your bank account or your 401k. Whatever you wish to embody must be created from the inside out. And the second thing to discover is that you are already everything that you want to be. What I mean by that is that everything that you desire is already inside you. And all the resources you need to create whatever you desire are inside of you too. What you're looking for isn't found in the things that you can see out there. True power comes from knowing that the source of all that you desire to become is within you now. So, what's the one thing you must do in order to become the person you want to be? Here it is. Let go of everything inside of you that is blocking you from becoming the person you want to be. Perhaps a lot of you, like me, spent years looking at self-help books. There was a time in my life when I was almost addicted to them. I would browse the self-help section of the bookstore, searching for the newest volume that would promise to fix whatever was wrong with me. And then one day, as I was looking for the next cure-all, a title jumped out at me. There is nothing wrong with you. Written by a Buddhist monk named Sherry Huber, the central theme of the book is that there's a really fine line between wanting to be a better person on the one hand and believing that you're a defective person. And too often we beat ourselves up because we don't measure up to this or that standard of achievement. That kind of thinking results in, at the very least, an inferiority complex, and taken to extremes, it leads to self-loathing and perhaps even suicide. Ms. Huber's book discusses how self-hate works, how to identify it, and how to go beyond it. And it provides examples of the forms self-hate takes, including taking blame for what goes wrong, but not taking credit when things go well, holding grudges, and the curse of perfectionism. And it then explores the many ways that this negative self-image manifests, including its role in addiction, the battering cycle, and other life problems. Now, if you're dealing with any of these issues, this book might be helpful to you, but to me, the best thing about it was the title. There is nothing wrong with you. In other words, there's nothing wrong with wanting to enjoy a bigger and better experience of life. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a better spouse or a better friend or a better writer or artist or nurse or mechanic or whatever. The urge for something bigger and better is natural. It's an expression of the divine. But that does not mean that you're worthless until you're bigger and better. You are not a defective product. It's like the song that's sung in self-help circles. I love myself the way I am. The lyrics include, I love myself the way I am, and still I want to grow. But change outside can only come when deep inside I know I'm beautiful and capable of being the best me I can. And I love myself just the way I am. Do you see the point? If you're a defective person, how will you ever become the person you want to be? If you're defective, you don't have the wherewithal to be anything but defective. It would be like expecting an old broken down clunker of a car to take you to California. Probably not going to happen. You can't be what you're not. So if you want a bigger and better experience of life, you have to start with the fact that there is nothing wrong with you. You may have made some bad choices in life. You may have thought and believed some incorrect things, but none of that diminishes your worth as a perfect idea in the mind of God. So how do we begin the process of becoming who we want to be? Well, to start, it would be very helpful if we extended an olive branch to ourselves, an offer of peace and compassion, and having decided to love ourselves just the way we are, we can begin to deal with the obstructions that are standing between us and our best life. If we've never tried to confront these obstructions or obstacles, we may have accepted them as being normal or just the way things are. And if we fail at whatever we're attempting, instead of trying again with the benefit of experience, we may quit and say, that's just the way it is. But if we go there, our obstacles become our insufficiencies. We make them a part of ourselves. And they'll stay there, restricting our lives. So we clear them out. In psychologist Jordan Peterson's best-selling book, 12 Rules for Life, he states that the process of abandoning your insufficiencies is similar to burning off dead wood. And he uses the process of a forest fire to explain the concept. Forests collect a lot of dead leaves and branches, and the amount of flammable material keeps increasing with time. And this isn't an issue if it's wet, but if it's dry, it becomes a recipe for a massive fire. And this seems like a tragedy, but something interesting happens. A lot of dead stuff that was hindering new growth gets eliminated, allowing new life to spring up. And that debris and dead wood wasn't always trash. It was once vibrant life, but it outlived its usefulness, and having served its purpose, it needs to go. Well, the fires in our own lives may be uncomfortable and painful in the moment, but in the long run, they help us grow and perhaps protect us from bigger fires. In order to become the new versions of ourselves and let go of the old parts that keep us reliving our stories of victimhood, weakness, and despair, we have to burn off those parts like dead wood to allow the new growth that is always waiting to flourish. By the way, if you've read Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules for Life, and if you've mastered all 12 of them, you may be interested to know that you have more work to do. His latest book is 12 More Rules for Life. So, how do we get rid of that dead undergrowth in our lives? First, get acquainted with the truth and live by it. And what is the truth? You are a child of God, a perfect idea in the mind of God, spirit in human form. And as such, you are a masterpiece of creation. As Paul pointed out, we are children of God, and that is our starting point for whatever we wish to do in life. And then, having established that truth, we must let go of any and all thoughts which contradict that truth. Anytime you think a negative, critical, fearful, or harmful thought about yourself, you are disconnecting from your truth. Your truth is that you're an amazingly powerful, beautiful, gifted, and abundant person. And therefore, anytime you tell yourself that you cannot do something or cannot have something, you are lying to yourself. Your truth is that you have the ability to become anything you are inspired to be. And remember that that word inspire literally means in spirit. Spirit never supplies an inspiration without supplying the ways and means to make that inspiration a reality. So, let go of the excuses. Let go of the reasons you can't. If your path forward is blocked, then it's time to clear out the underbrush. Let's face it, you can always think up plenty of reasons why you can't do something. All you need is one good reason why you can. So let go of the feeling of not being good enough. From time to time, we've all had this feeling of not being adequate, and we think that we're incomplete, that we're broken and need fixing, that there's something missing, and it's our job to find out what it is. But remember that because you are made by Spirit and made out of Spirit, you are perfect, whole, and complete. There is nothing wrong with you. And the belief that you are flawed is a feeling that you need to release. So be willing to go deeper. Oftentimes, it feels easier to look for our self-worth in the outer world. We enjoy somehow trying to manipulate, control the outer world instead of turning inward to do the deeper work. And many of us are afraid to go deep inside ourselves. Doing this means facing those parts of you that perhaps you don't feel good about. However, it is through loving and accepting those parts that they can be healed. In just a few weeks, it will be high school and college commencement season. And the kind of talk I'm doing this morning might be motivational to those just starting out in their adult lives. But what about those of us who've had quite a few trips around the sun? Surely we're through becoming whatever we are. Certainly, we must be too old to be anyone new. Not really. A couple of stories. First one about Julia Carolyn McWilliams, Pasadena, California. She worked for the CIA as an intelligence analyst, and her husband was in the Foreign Service stationed in Europe. And looking for a way to occupy her time, Julia enrolled in a cooking school. And in her late 50s, she became famous in books and on TV as Julia Child, French chef. My favorite late in life success story involves a boy who grew up in Indiana in extreme poverty. He was forced to drop out of school in the 7th grade to help support the family. He worked as a farmhand, a buggy painter, a ferryboat operator, and a life insurance salesman. He received a questionable law degree from a fly-by-night mail-order law school and proceeded to spend several years practicing law in Arkansas. And as a senior citizen, he ran a gas station with a little attached cafe. And while there, he developed a new recipe. And at the age of 67, he started one of the most successful businesses of the 20th century, Colonel Sanders Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, Julia Child was made out of the same stuff as you and me, and so was Colonel Sanders. Julia Child had never been a chef, and she wasn't French. Harlan Sanders wasn't a colonel, and he wasn't even a Kentuckian. Neither one of them had any special advantages, but they became what they decided to become. And so can you. If anyone has ever created in his or her mind what he or she wanted, then you too can originate what you want in your mind. God does not play favorites. You can choose to become successful by becoming what you choose. One more story. It's a story about Jesse. Jesse hated his job, and you would too if you had to do it. Jesse was a chicken plucker. He stood on a line in a processing plant and pulled feathers off dead chickens. It wasn't much of a job, but at the time, Jesse didn't think he was much of a person. His father was a brute of a man who was perpetually abusive. Jesse's older brother wasn't much better. He was always picking on Jesse, beating him up. Life was anything but easy, growing up in a rough home in West Virginia. Jesse figured that life didn't have much to offer for someone like him. And to make matters worse, Jesse was always sick. Sometimes it was a real physical illness, but way too often it was all in his head. He was a first-class hypochondriac. Being a small, skinny child when he started school, he was the target of every bully on the playground. For Jesse, tomorrow wasn't something that he looked forward to. But along the way, he acquired a dream. He wanted to become a ventriloquist. He found books on ventriloquism, and he practiced with sock puppets and saved his hard-earned dollars until he could get a real ventriloquist dummy. When he got old enough, he joined the military. And even though many of his hypochondriac symptoms persisted, the military recognized his talents and put him in the entertainment corps. And that was when his world changed. That was when he gained some confidence because he found that he had a talent for making people laugh. Little Jesse had finally found himself. The history books are full of people who overcame a handicap and went on to make a success of themselves. But Jesse never really overcame his handicaps. He was still sickly, nervous, and jittery a lot of the time. But he used his paranoia to make millions of dollars. And he became one of the best-loved characters of all time doing it. That little paranoid hypochondriac who transferred his nervousness into a successful career still holds the all-time record for the most Emmy Awards ever given in a single category. The nervous but talented comedian who brought Barney Fife to life was Jessie Dawn Knotts. A number of years ago, Raymond Charles Barker wrote this about the difference between being and becoming. Remember, he wrote, that you are a co-creator. You don't have to stay the way you are if you don't like yourself. Look at yourself in the mirror and admit that in some way it is your fault. It is a reflection of the fact that there is something wrong with your self-image. Create something new in your life. You can do it. And if you keep trying, eventually you'll find that you have created a new you. Now, Barker could be a little rough. He was into tough love, and he pulled no punches. He was always very blunt. He wrote, if you don't like yourself, look at yourself in the mirror and admit that in some way it is your fault. But he didn't say that you are defective. What he said was, it's a reflection of the fact that there is something wrong with your self-image. There isn't anything wrong with you. There's something wrong with how you're looking at yourself. You are being. You are being because God is creating you. And what you're becoming is entirely up to you. Being and becoming are all possible because they're part of the great I am. You and I are infinite potential in finite form. Finite because our physical selves are not permanent and we are not omnipresent. But because our being is of the infinite, our opportunities to become are limitless. We have so many choices. My theory is that even God does not know how we'll turn out. Now, that may strike some folks as a sacrilege, but here's how I arrived at that conclusion. If God did know what we would choose and how we'd turn out, and knew that we'd end up on Skid Row or in a concentration camp or suffering from some terrible disease, why would God go ahead and create us? And furthermore, if there were such a thing as destiny, a predetermined fate, then we would be nothing more than puppets dancing on cosmic strings. But God places no strings on us. We are being, but what we are becoming is up to no one but ourselves. As Emerson put it, make the most of yourself, for that is all there is of you. Make the most of yourself, for that is all there is of you. And all there is of you is enough. Always has been, always will be. Everything you need is already here. As Michelangelo noted when asked how he produced beautiful sculptures from a block of marble, the sculpture is already complete within the marble block before I start my work. It is already there. I just have to chisel away the superfluous material. Being is what you are right now. Becoming is determined by what you're thinking, believing, and doing right now. Becoming who we truly are is not a goal to be met just once in our lives. It's a never-ending, constantly evolving, real-time acceptance that our full potential, just like our tastes and values, is totally open-ended. We are not set in stone. To attain lifelong fulfillment, we can't ever retire from seeking it out. Ralph Marston wrote, all that you are right now. All that you can be begins in this moment. Now is a great place to be. For when you live it fully, with love, with gratitude, with purpose, anything is possible. Every day, we have access to that which is greater than what we had yesterday. Every day, we can know what was a mystery yesterday. Every day, we are becoming being, the logical and necessary outcome of the creative power of the great I Am, within which all things are possible. Namaste. The being becoming in me salutes the being becoming in you. And so it is.